Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Innovation Forge. I am your host, David Dysart, and you're joining me on a Gilded build tonight. This episode is a real time build of something that I think a lot of Slate teams can relate to, even if you haven't received this particular request. A build that just keeps getting additional bells and whistles to meet an endless list of requests and requirements. In this walkthrough, I am going to be building an ongoing adaptive deliver engine in Slate. It's a setup that uses configurable joins, dictionary exports, for loops, conditional logic, dynamic event handling to power a recurring deliver that promotes the right events to the right students. We get into curated event lists, custom time formatting, group-specific event visibility, and even logic for when to link a student straight to an event versus sending them to an umbrella registration page. So, if you have ever needed a deliver that feels smarter than a static event email, or if you've been asked to pile on just one more rule, one more exception, or one more fancy little feature, this one's for you. Let's see how an ode takes shape today. We already have our deliver built here, and I'm just in a clean slate environment, so anything that pops up here will just be test records, test events, things like that. And we're going to start off by creating a recipient list. And we're going to do this in configurable joins. This would not be possible in the old Slate template library. So we're just going to call this an ode. And for records, you can do person, you can do application. I typically like to do something like this in person because this allows me to advertise or whatever I'm doing in this email to a inquiry pool, and I can just modify that to then have a second life with applicants, admits, deposited students, melt, yield, all those different pieces. So I typically will just build in person. Same thing when I'm doing my predictive modeling and scoring and stuff like that. I usually just leave everything in that person scope. It gives you a lot more flexibility with how you want to use this on a year-over-year ongoing occurrence. So what we have to do is we actually have to create our curated dynamic list of events. So we're going to add a subquery. Now, a lot of you might be used to just creating a subquery and staying on this dependent subquery. What we're actually going to do is an independent subquery. And what this gives us is the ability to pull from a different data set or a different table of data that's not related to your student at all. And we're just going to call this events. You're going to want, because we're going to be doing this as a for loop, you want this name to be pretty simple. Maybe some lower cases, no spaces, very short. And then now we're not going to do records here because we're not trying to pull a list of students or anything like that. We're going to want related. And we're just going to come down here. Oh, they have a lot of stuff in this, in this clean slate. So I'm just going to choose form because forms are used for forms, events, scheduler. So we're going to use that. And we're going to change this from a rank to a dictionary export. If you haven't used the dictionary export before, it's very similar to like a concatenate, but instead of being very locked in with the order and the presentation of your exports, you're just essentially creating a library of merge fields that you can pull in and replicate. Now we're going to start with this first record that's going to be fitting our criteria of our query and filters, and we're going to limit this to 20. Let's say. So we're not going to list more than 20 upcoming events in this email. You could limit this to 5, 10, 50, however long you want your list to be in Slate. And we're going to drop this all inside of a table. So it'll have columns, rows, to give it a bit of structure. So it's a little bit more forgiving if you are adding several records to this. I probably should have, about 5 minutes in. Okay. So we'll probably go for about an hour. So probably about 10:40ish tonight. So I'll keep an eye on that and try not to go too much longer than that. So we're going to do a few different pieces here. I kind of touched on some of them earlier in the intro, but one of the pieces we're going to do is we're going to link to the event for some of these, so the student can sign up directly on the event. But for some of them, we're going to have an umbrella event, because there's going to be some on-campus events. Student who comes to campus uses like an umbrella campus visit template, essentially, instead of signing up directly for the individual events. So we're just going to maybe say this is just the umbrella event. And this does get a little tricky when you have your independent subquery as your main and then a dependent. This will also be an independent as well, but you have two independent subqueries that are going to be the same base. It gets a little tricky. So you just kind of have to remember that because you are adding this additional independent subquery, and we'll get to this in a second. They're going to show up in the same section of the pop-up when you're choosing like exports and filters. But when we are working with them in the main pop-up, because we have the name of the join, it'll be different. But when we're adding our filters here, and we'll see this in a second, you can see how I had under my direct filters, I have form independent subquery, and I have two templates. So one of this is this new independent subquery that I'm working with, and one is the original like top layer independent subquery. So what we want is this first one, because that is going to be this new join that we're making. I don't know why it's first. Like intuitively, I would think it would be second, but that's not how it works. And I think, yeah, this is just in this clean slate. So we're just going to use this Saturday open house as a proxy for our template or our umbrella event. So because we are going to be linking to the umbrella event for that same day, for some of these situations, we also need to make sure that we're pulling the right umbrella event. And this could be an issue if like maybe you have an umbrella event for inquiries and an umbrella event for admitted students. You can still direct this. It's you're going to do another independent subquery, which we're not going to do now. I don't think there's a lot of value added to doing that much in this already very gilded build of this delivered. So we're just going to say same date. Always be as descriptive as you can without being overly verbose. Take that from someone who is already very overly verbose 99% of the time. So we're just going to do start date. And again, you see how it's a thing for the exports as well, not just the filters. So we're going to add the start date and time for both. And again, we know this first one is our new join. So we're just going to call this an umbrella. And we're just going to switch this to date, because chances are your umbrella event and your random event that day aren't going to have the same time. And then we're just going to call this the event. And we're going to switch that to date as well. And these just need to be the same. That way you're pulling. Now you are going to run into an issue if there is no umbrella event for that day for some reason. You're going to get an error, which this is the second time I'm recording this YouTube live, and I had made we'll call it a simple blunder, and I essentially wasn't pulling any dates for my umbrella events. If you did see my original YouTube live on this was the issue. Was I had built the first piece before establishing this join. So if you have no event here, there's no umbrella event for that day, you're going to essentially break your delivery. So you always have to be very in tune with your events team or whoever is kind of running events, making sure that there will be an umbrella event that correlates with these very specific events. You could add an additional filter just saying like, is this a confirmed, I guess it's probably active. like you can add like a filters like, oh, I only want to pull in like a confirmed or active, but again, someone turns it tend to be inactive. Yeah, there's a lot of like wiggle room on the kind of backside of this that could go awry. So just again, make sure that you're very in touch with your events in Slate, making sure that you're not going to try to link them to an event that doesn't exist. So what you could do is then just add we'll kind of work how we do the coalesce so that this shouldn't be an issue, but it won't be like a drastic issue. It'll still be an issue that your tributary event's getting a sign up, but you should also just have some kind of data cleanup report to catch those issues. So we are connecting to our umbrella events, and let's see. I think the best thing that we can do now is work on the time of our events. So we have at my institution a very specific way that we display times. If it's like from this time to this time and it's PM to PM or AM to AM, we don't list that first AM or that first PM. We just list the last one. If the start or end time is at like 12 p.m., we say noon. We don't actually write out 12 p.m. They're also very specific about how to format PM versus like a PM and AM. It's like a lot of depending on how structured your style guide is, like you can work with like AM, PM, stuff like that. But it's lowercase a period, lowercase m period. So again, because we're having to pull all of these individual formatting pieces, I can't really do this in a format mask. Because also if it's on like at the hour, like it's 2 p.m., we don't list the colon and the 00. It's just 2 a.m. to, I should have chosen a number other than 2. So it's 3 to 4 a.m. Or whatever the time is. So because it is such a very strict series of requirements we have for our time, we can't just use a format mask. So it's a very in-depth build actually to do this time formatting. So we're gonna do this here. Let me just make sure I'm gonna write this correctly. Okay, so we're gonna build a noon then time. And again, because this is a dictionary, I'm going to try to keep these pretty computer friendly. I'm not going to add spaces. I'm not going to name them anything that might pull a different data element in Slate, but still be pretty descriptive. So I'm going to do a concatenate here, which again is just going to kind of list each of these data exports in my email. And you could do things like, oh, I only want like 2 data records pulled. I can add in like a space or a bar or whatever I want with this export separator. And then if there is like 2 line items, what kind of separator do I want for those different line items? So we do have a lot of fun flexibility with concatenate. We're not really going to do anything with that here though. So we need to do our start time. So we're just going to do time start, and we're going to do a formula here. So this first layer of formula is how we're going to establish noon or like midnight. We're not running any events at midnight, so I don't even bother with that in the formula. But we want to make sure that if it's 12 p.m., we're just going to say the word noon instead of listing 12 p.m. And you can kind of get away with doing this a little bit differently. This is, I think, just the cleanest way I can do it and not pull my hair out. So I do have to build my time twice. Once with that kind of adaptive PM, but it's kind of an issue. If it's 12 p.m. to 1 p.m., then my typical formula is going to strip out the PM. So it gets a little weird if I just try to use just my adaptive TT. So I am going to build this basically twice, but And I'm being a little more flippant with how I'm labeling this deep into my chain of subqueries. And we're just going to change this to another concatenate. And we're going to start off with our, let's call that hour actually. I think we're going to try to streamline the names a little bit. And we're going to do another formula. And what we're going to do in this one is we're going to, you can't really do like a single hour again that strips off that leading running zero. So we kind of have to, again, just because that is an individual data element, we're going to have to manually build that in a formula. And please, someone correct me if I'm wrong. And like, oh, David, why would you do it this way? You could obviously just do it this way. Because any opportunity to streamline this would be great. And now just remember, we are trying to pull the date and time of the individual events that we're listing. Don't stumble and choose this umbrella event yet. That's going to be for the URL later. So we're going to get our start time for the event. This is interesting. I don't feel like I don't see a time zone when I'm working with times in the main Slate. I wonder if this is a new thing. Huh, that's fun. Something to test out later when I'm not on live. So we're just going to call this time H. This is going to help because we're going to have to do the start time and the end time. So our formula is to just be a little more evergreen across the start and end times. And then I also have the habit of just listing my format mask. This is going to be 2 H's. Just so I know if I'm like looking at an old export, I'm like, how did I build this? I'm not just assuming that I did this raw export. I'm like, oh, okay, I did a format mask on that. So we have our hours there. So case when, and a case when is just kind of, you use Excel, it's like an if statement. You're just testing the logic of some kind of statement. And if it's true, give me a value. If it's not true, give me a different value. You could always do like an else statement as well if nothing there. So I just want the first left digit in that hour. If that equals a 0, then give me the right of it. And I just want that one right number. So if this is like 6 a.m., 6 p.m., anything like that, then I'm just going to pull that 6. I'm not going to pull that running 0 there. And again, I just haven't had a lot of luck with pulling out the individual format mask. If you're doing like a broader format mask, it works. But because of all of our requirements later on, I haven't gotten it to work when it's just displaying the hour like this. So if it's something else like 10, 11, 12, then just give me the full formatted time. And we're just going to end that. So we have our very specific hour formatting. And then let's go ahead and do our minute. So I usually do this a little bit differently because when I started out doing comms for this institution, we typically had events at the top of the hour or at 30. And then, so it's just a simpler existence export. So if it was like, if it's 30, cool, show 30. If it's not, then we're just going to leave this blank. But we are getting some more events that are on the 15 minutes, especially for like admitted student day and stuff like that. Could be at the 15. So I did do, and I just bumped my microphone. I did do a slightly different formula for this. So we're just going to do another formula here. And we want our start time. Again, make sure you get the right one. And we're just going to call that minute. And so again, we're just doing a case when and actually, you know what? I can probably, we'll add the colon here. It'll be a little bit easier. No, let's do a concatenate with that, just in case this does something weird. I haven't actually experimented with. I haven't tested that yet. So when that mm equals 0, 0. Then, so yeah, we don't list the 0, 0 when it's on the hour. Else, I'm actually just going to concatenate this. I can spell concatenate. See me trying to be like caps to like do functions. So I just add that little formatting there. So I have my minutes when it's appropriate to display them. And now we'll do our time. So I'm just going to grab our start time again. Time. And we're going to do a formula for this one as well. And we also need our actual end time too. Because we're going to need to pull out that first. And we can just call this start. So case when that's start. Oh, I guess we're not, yeah, this is more so to do the formatting of that because we haven't done the adaptive one yet. So that equals AM. Then a period AM. Else, we're just going to call this PM. I probably shouldn't be narrating this a lot more for people who are listening to this on the podcast and not watching the video, but I'm like, oh man, there's just no way I could actually talk through this in a way that is meaningful if someone is just listening to this realistically. So I apologize for the folks who are listening to this. Please go watch the video. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, Substack. Yeah, that's is definitely going to be a watch along. So that should get me my start time. And then we're just gonna, yeah, we're gonna do end time. And we're just going to pull these pieces here. And we're just gonna call this time HH. And I'm just going to delete that old start one. And then my formula still works because it's the same name. And then I'm going to do my end time again. And we're going to rename that. And again, delete the start date and time. And then for the TT, now I already kind of just did the naming, so we're just going to call this end. Okay, so we now have our start time, our end time, and oh wait, oh yeah, it's fine. I can have these both here, and we're going to. Let's build the adaptive version of this as well. So we need this adaptive time. And now this is where we need to pull in the fact that if it's the same, if the start and end times are both AMs, drop the first AM. If they're both PMs, drop the first PM. But if it crosses, then we will have AM and PM. So we do need a bit different of a formula here though. So we're just going to start with another case when. So if that start time equals the end time, and this is just the TT, so like the AMs, then we're not going to list the TT. When The start equals AM. And then we're just going to list our AM, PM. And then if it's not AM or it's not matching, then it's obviously PM. And then we can just end our case statement there. I somehow managed to type else twice. That's a new one for me. I've done a lot of silly things in Slate while building formulas. That's definitely a new one. So we have our adaptive time here. So we do need to write a formula now. So in case when my actual start time is 12 p.m. Oh, it's so late. I need to go to bed. Then we're just going to give us the word noon. Else, we're going to do our adaptive time, which again pulls out the AM PM as needed. And then we're just going to end that. So that's our noon, then start time. And then we can just duplicate that. And then we can just delete these start times here. So if the end time is 12 p.m. then noon, else we're just going to give me because we're always going to include the AM or PM at the end of at the final date. So we don't need that adaptive piece. And we're just going to call that noon time end. And if we want just to improve performance a little bit, we can go delete that end time from the start time export. And I should save this because I feel like too often I will just like accidentally hit escape or something and I lose my beautiful subquery that I spent 45 minutes building, because that's just how things go sometimes. So we have our time now for our dynamically adaptively generated list of events. And we can just add date. So we're just going to add, not the umbrella. We're going to do this for the main event. And again, we're just going to call this something that's pretty simple. If you want to add some formatting, maybe we want to do like the day of the week. Maybe we want to also do month, day, year. I don't know, however you want to do it. We'll just have something generated there. And again, it doesn't matter what order you're doing these in, because you're just going to be pulling these exports as references in our for loop. And maybe if we want to add our title here of our event, again, we're going to rename that to something short, simple, no spaces, because you have to do dashes if you do spaces. And then here, we can just save that again. Click back into this. Now we want to build our link. So again, typically we're going to be linking to the event itself that we're listing the name of and the time of, but sometimes we're going to need a link to the umbrella event that's happening that day. So maybe we just do umbrella main URL. And we're just going to coalesce this. And a coalesce essentially does it. If this first export doesn't have a value, go to the second export. If that second export doesn't have a value, go to the third. And basically, we'll just continually going down the list until it finds a export with a value. One thing that I found very annoying with coalesces is if you do an existence export and you leave the like not exist blank, that will break the chain of the coalesce, which is wildly infuriating and frustrating, and for a techno-functional user who doesn't actually have to know what the code is behind the scenes that is causing that break, is just so annoying. I hate it so much. I feel like once a year I'll try like, maybe it works now, and it never works. So we're going to list our umbrella event URL first, because even if for some reason we want to be displaying the umbrella event URL, and it just maybe it's just not in Slate or it's inactive, and we've filtered on that. We don't want people to just get a broken link. So worst comes to worst, they're just gonna, if they're not getting the umbrella link because we don't want them to, or because there's an issue in Slate, at least we're gonna get them to sign up for the actual Slate event. And again, just have a Slate report that's looking for any of your tributary events that should be signed up for through the umbrella event. So we're just gonna call this umbrella URL. And we're going to concatenate this as well. Again, we're just going to put several some data pieces together. So we're going to search for our umbrella, and we're just going to search for URL. There's lots of URLs here, but we just want the public-facing one, so we're just going to grab that simple URL. And we want to pre-populate or link this to the student record when possible. So we're going to add an and person equals. And this is going to add a parameter to your URL, and we're going to pass through the person or the application GUID, or if it's a data set or whatever it could be. Always use person. So even if you're using the application GUID, just the parameter itself is person. The ampersand here can be an ampersand, or it could be an question mark. The first parameter in a URL is a question mark, so if you don't have a parameter and use an ampersand, there are going to be issues. Typically, when you have a Slate form or a Slate event, Slate will use the question mark parameter to essentially just call in the that form GUID. If you have overridden that to be a custom URL, then there is no question mark, there is no parameter. That's like no first parameter, so you would use the question mark. You can't like use a question mark and a question mark and a question mark. It has to be a question mark, and then it has to be ampersand. So if you're adding multiple parameters to this, just know which parameter you're doing when. And I would definitely recommend always having like a standard operating procedure. At my old institution, I always did custom URLs. So if there was going to be anything public facing, that a student or whatever kind of record was engaging with it, it always just had a custom URL. That way, whenever we added the personalized links, the first one was always going to be a question mark. At my current institution, we don't have that practice. Most things are just the standard generic default URL. So they already have that question mark, so we just used ampersands. So that was a long diatribe on personalized links. Probably just hopefully AI just cuts that as a clip, and I can just post that. And then since we have our person base, we're just going to use a person GUID, GUID, GIF, however we're doing it. And that's just going to be our URL. So it's going to be the events URL, and we're going to add a personalized URL that links that URL to the student's record. And I just wanted to save that so I don't lose it. I need to be saving these, especially while I'm live. I don't have to like rebuild 20-minute build. So, we only want this URL to be displayed if the event we're listing in the email should be linked to the umbrella event. So we're just going to pull in a template here. So again, we're going to our main event template, because that's what's relevant here. And maybe, what would be a good, like information session. If it's an information session, it should be using that umbrella event. So we're just going to do that as our filter. And now we're going to build the actual like main events URL. So we're just going to copy that, and we're going to do this as the main URL, and we're going to delete the umbrellas URL, and we're just going to do a URL again and do it from this main event listing. So you could do like, if the flip side of in an information session is not an information session, we can do that. But then I would still recommend some kind of like backstop. So like if for some reason there's no URLs here, there should be something. So I'm just going to inactivate that filter altogether for my main URL. That way they will just always will be some kind of URL that I can show them that they can sign up for, and we can figure out the breakage later on. So we have our 4 data points now. We have the event title, the date, the time, and then the very adaptive link. So we are going to add some filters though, because we're not just going to list every event in Slate or every form, because this is just a form base. So every form, scheduler, event. So we're going to add some kind of the standards. So status for the events we're being listing here. We just want confirmed, no displaying tentative or canceled events. Start date. We only want to show events that are happening greater than today. For like webinars and stuff, I typically will have a reminder that goes out day of, such as a separate deliver. It lists that day's event and maybe like 2 or 3 upcoming events. Again, just so it's not just, hey, sign up for today's event that you've had several opportunities to sign up for, but you decided not to. So we're just going to say greater than today. And we're also maybe just going to want to display this week's events in this export. So we're going to say less than or equal to today plus 7. And we're going to play with this a little bit in a minute. That'll be the last thing that we go over. So another fun thing that you only find out about when something breaks or you are smart enough to catch when you're testing something is when, obviously, we only want to display events that the student can sign up for. So if the event is full, well, obviously we don't want to list that. And this is really important for things like when you we're doing recruitment travel. So here's a college fair and I'm doing some interviews or whatever it is. Just making sure that you are, I probably should have done that. I should have done like an if statement of if the length of this dictionary is nothing, then hide it. But I'm doing something else with conditional logic. So maybe if we have time. That's 2 conditional logics. So it's an if, then an else if, then and. We could do that. It depends on how much time we have left. As I randomly add more stuff to the Gilded build as we talk. So we're going to say there has to be at least 1 space available. But what about the events in Slate that don't have a limit added to them? What if it's just an event that if as many people can sign up for as they want? Well, there is no value in that space available. So if there is no limit, there is no spaces available. So you're going to exclude those events in this list. So we're going to do an existence export, or it non-exists, I guess. So we're just going to do not exists space available. And let's go ahead and we're just going to add that space available. Oh, yes, a beautiful, wonderful inability to type is coming on strong here. So if there is no value that exists there because there just is no limit, so Slate's not populating that field there. So if that doesn't exist, so basically it's a limitless event, then we're going to display those as well. So again, just those fun things. Again, AI. When I pass this through to you on like Substack, this is a clip that I want. I don't think it works like that, but. And then maybe we're only going to be listing for like the type. We just want just events. We're not doing scheduler. We're not doing form. If we are purposely excluding events, which we do that at my institution, like, this is a special event that is specific for this scholarship or this program, we're never going to advertise that kind of event in one of these ongoing emails. They get their own specialized one-off series of emails. Then I like to very specifically remove those by event title, or maybe you can do it by folder or template, whatever it is. So we're just going to say event title. I'm going to say we don't want this. And where's that derby? I feel like I was just picking on derby, but I knew nothing about. But like, I don't want to advertise for the Derby High School. Maybe that's a special one-off thing. Maybe we don't want to advertise that for some reason. And we also don't want to advertise anything that's in the folder of, let's see what Clean Slate has for folders. Advising portals. We don't want to advertise advising portal events to our prospective students. That's actually what I used last time I did this. Huh. Oh, that's fun. So, and we're going to save this again, but we're going to pop right back into this. So now comes this group specific piece. So we are purposefully excluding events that we don't want anyone to see. But maybe we have international students and we have international events and we only want to display international events to those international students. Or we just want to display out-of-state to out-of-state students. Or we want to only display business events to business majors. That's where this next piece is going to come in. I'm just going to drop this to the top just because. So we're just going to call this group specific events. And again, naming doesn't really matter here. And there is two sides of this. So we're going to list the conditions for the group specific events. And then there is going to be one last filter that is just like, okay, give us all the other events then. So if you are updating or adding a new group specific one, you do have to update that second one as well. So we're just going to call this international. So we need to add filters on both the event side and on the student side here. So again, we're just going to do another exists, and we're just going to do folder because maybe we have our international webinars or events or whatever they are in a specific folder. And I don't think this was in Clean Slate. I think I just added this myself. So we're just going international. And again, because this folder is across the form types, I would recommend having different naming conventions for like forms, events, and schedulers, so you're not accidentally clicking in the wrong folder, because that would also be an issue. And then citizenship status, maybe that's how we are determining who an international student is. Maybe you're doing that with address, whatever it could be. So we're just going to say if they're a foreign national, and the event that we're trying, if the student receiving this is a foreign national, and the individual event that's being listed inside of that for loop is in the folder of international, show that event to that record receiving the email. If either of those are untrue, like the student is not a foreign national, or the student or the email, the event is not in that international folder, then we're going to suppress. And we're going to fix this as the student side of it right now. So, and you could do multiple types of these group specific and event specific pieces here. But this will be like the catch-all that we do is just other webinars. And you can just say update. So that way you know if you're adding something or updating one of your sets of filters, you know like, hey, I also need to update this. And we're just going to exists, and we're just going to say folder. And we're just going to say not in international. Because if an event is not in that international folder, we want everyone to see it. So again, we need to have our group specific, but then we also need to have everything that's not group specific in this or statement here. So we've done our fancy time. We've done our fancy URL redirect as needed. We've done group specific events to the proper groups. We've done some fun gotchas that you can stumble into, like space available, person-specific links, URL parameters. We do want to order this because we want the listing of events to essentially be ascending from like the closest event to the furthest away event. So we're going to do that trusty old start date time. And again, we're doing that from the form independent subquery. And by default, it goes to ascending, which is great. The date time is automatically just going to format mask itself to be the appropriate like morning, PM, yada yada yada. So we don't actually have to add a format mask or anything like that to here. So we're just going to sort that. Awesome. And maybe we know we want to do current date. Maybe we know what are the days we want to send this. Maybe we want to send this on 4/17/26, and we know we want to send this on 4/24/26. If it is very regimented, like, oh, it's every Friday, you can kind of just deal with that in the send mailing settings of the actual delivery itself. But maybe I was like, oh, no, I have a very adaptive dynamic list here. So I'm going to do 4/19, but then I also want to do 4/28. So if you do have a very specific send schedule, you can do this in the filters here and just a current date in list the dates you wanted to run. And essentially, the email can try to send every day because you're going to do that. You're going to do all the days of the week, the right deliver window, send range. But whenever it says like, oh, I'm going to send it on the 18th, well, there is no matching records on the 18th because I'm actually because I'm Pacific time, it thinks that where I'm actually already in the 17th. But if none of these dates are today, there just are no matching rows, so it won't send to anybody. I think this is one of those things that is not as widely known as I would think it is. So that's just a life-changing piece if you don't know this. I've gotten a lot of pushback on this from staff on it being a little complicated because like, oh, we should have a deliver on 4/17 and we should have another deliver on 4/19. We should have another deliver on 4/28. No, that's just a hard no for me. I'm not building 3 delivers for the same email to send 3 times. Gets a little complicated on like, oh, well, what emails do we have coming up this week? Stuff like that. Just, no, I'm not building this email 3 times and sending it 3 times. That's just not, I'm not going to do that. You get someone else to do that if you want. I'm not going to do it. So the other element of this, though, is maybe if there are at least 5 events. If there are at least 5 events in the upcoming week, we only want to list those 5 events. If there is, say, less than 5, maybe there's only 3 events, like, we don't really want to send an email with just 3 events coming up. So we actually want to list 2 weeks of events in that situation then, because it's just we want to have a bulky enough email. It's like, okay, we do have events. We're not. It can look a little janky if you're like, oh, yes, we only have 3 events to advertise to you. I don't know, just it feels a little off. So one thing we can do is maybe if we're doing like 2 weeks of events, we want to cap it off at 10, just because we don't want to front load it. I mean, we don't want to back load it too much. So we're just going to say there is this kind of backup catch that is plus 14. So the next 2 weeks, but we're only going to limit this to the 10 events. So we're going to implement this first event, and we're just going to call them maybe this 2 weeks. I will say, though, a for loop's not going to like conditional logic, so you're going to have to put the for loop inside of a content block, which I think in general, I did that at a previous institution. All dictionaries were just in content blocks. That way, if like, hey, we want to change how we format content blocks, or like, hey, I want to reference what I do in my content blocks usually, it's just all in one spot, and you can kind of like blitz through the changes or reference them pretty easily. So I also just copied and pasted this in. I wasn't going to manually write this for loop table, but we can kind of go through this real quick. So it is a table. So you can like, oh, okay, I want the width to be 100% of the width. I want to space out that first column, which is going to have all of my my name, date, time to be 80%. I want that to be like 80% of the total width. I want 20% to be, and as you just saw, I just did a button here. I want that button to be 20% of the width of the email. And you could do like a headers and stuff like that. You can do like a single header across the table because they're like, hey, these are these events. Or if you need to add individual column headers, you can do that as well. I'm not going to get into all that right now. I don't think that's the best use of our time, as we have like 10, oh my gosh, I have 10 minutes left. The time goes, I thought I was doing so good on time, and I realized like, oh, it's not on the hour. I started randomly at like 45. So if you've looked at like conditional logic or stuff like that, you have seen the curly Q brackets are a way in HTML to kind of essentially do things. So a for loop is again going to pull those 20 events, and it's going to replicate your structure here for as many times as you have items in your for loop. So we're just going to hop back to that. I can just preview results. Yeah, that's fine. We're just gonna go through this. So it's basically we'll just list as many events as is relevant. So, and I didn't actually, I don't think there's any events that are falling into my my random series of filters. So this is just a for loop. There are two important naming elements here. So this event is just the name of your export. And this list, that can be any word. I use the word list just because a for loop is kind of a list. But you could, if you could do for loop if you wanted to. It doesn't matter what you put in here. Whatever you put in here has to be here, because you're essentially pulling the merge fields from your individual exports here in your dictionary. So whatever you're calling this here just also needs to be in this like list.date. And we're just calling out those individual items. So like the title, the date, noon, then time. I think I ended up naming this something a little bit different. So yeah, it was umbrella dash main URL. So you can use an image as your like clickable button. There are issues with accessibility unless you're using like an alt text and stuff like that. So I'm just actually creating something that looks like a button with HTML. Again, that gets a little tricky because you're in the for loop. So if you're like, depending on how you're building the HTML button, the tags can kind of try to break off the for loop, and that can be an issue. So tinker with it, use ChatGPT. I'm not good enough at HTML, but I'm not going to write this from scratch. So I am just building essentially an HTML button, so it's a little bit more accessible. The word register is that, so you can see like sign up. It could be whatever you want it to be. I guess you could even make that dependent on here. You can make this an export in your dictionary of if it's a sign up or a register now and you want it to be a little bit different, or like call it campus event or call it webinar in that element. You can definitely do that as well. As I just think about that as I'm looking at this, I'm like, oh, that would be an interesting way to do it, is making that also dynamic, and that's not just a static piece of text. So after all of that, you're going to end the N4. And again, we're just closing up the table here. So yeah, let's see if I did this right. I didn't. I think maybe there just aren't events. Is there just no events here? There we go. Yeah, there's just no events in my time frame. And I didn't add a static piece of text to split up my start time and end time. So that's the joys of doing things live and not really having notes I'm going off of, just going off of like a previous build. So if you're doing like noon to 4 p.m., if you might be able to do some stuff in like the format mask, but again, we're not really using format masks on anything here. So in our concatenate that lists our time, we're just going to add a static piece of text that is just space to space. That's a great band name. I gotta start a band called Space to Space. Actually, I need artistic music ability before I do that. So you can see, I wonder if we can see, I don't have anything that's breads that cuts across AM to PM, but you can see all the formatting is working. So we have our like information session, and I don't know why my table here is half of my email width, but probably troubleshoot that real quick. So I have my title of my event. I have however I did my format mask for like the day of the week and then the date. I have my 10 to 11 a.m. and I should have made some test events that would test the rest of it. So let me see if I can just update this real quick to see why is it only half of my screen. Is it the 600? Yeah, not that important. We should wrap this up. I don't know why I'm trying to troubleshoot a clean slate mailing for, but thank you so much for joining me. We're going to go through the blueprint breakdown before I sign out, though. So the blueprint breakdown, 5 practical takeaways that you can take with you. I do this with all of my episodes. Whether it's these practical builds, it's the Forge Bellows, it's the Aura reports, it's the interviews that I do with just fantastic and amazing people for the Innovation Forge. That's people who are in the Slate front lines. It's people who are doing marketing. It's people who aren't even in higher education. Vance Morris was a wonderful, amazing guest on the podcast for semester 3 of the Innovation Forge. Definitely go check out his episode. But yeah, 5 practical takeaways. So build the email around a dictionary export, not fixed content block, static pieces of like, oh, this year we got to update the events we're pointing to and update the types of events we want to look at and manually type. No. Your event email needs to flex based on how many events are available. And this could be because you're sending this every week, or it's just like, hey, I'm going to send the same email next year. I want my events to just automatically update. I don't want to have to manually type in. Or I'm going to send 25 college fair or prospective student meetups or recruitment event interviews, whatever it is. I'm going to send 80 of these emails, and it just needs to work. I don't want to manually type in where the counselor is going to be at. Like, no, it's going to pull the name of the event from the Slate event. It's going to dynamically pull time, date, location, all those pieces. And that's probably something I'll do another Gilded build maybe of, or a workbench work through, or a ForgeWorks grimoire, all the different type of video trainings I do that are all just slightly different. But yeah, no, just build a dictionary export. It's going to save you time in the long run as you reuse these email templates, and it gives you that scalable structure. Instead of hard coding rows, you let Slate generate the right number of events entries just dynamically. That makes weekly event promotions much easier to maintain. again, or if you're using the same template across multiple event advertisements, or you're just doing year over year the same types of emails. 2, use layers of exports when your office is really picky about their formatting rules. So time formatting, it just gets ugly fast. Noon, midnight, AM, PM styling, lowercase, dots, hiding unnecessary minutes, suppressing repeated AM or PM markers. It all sounds small until you actually have to build it. And it's just like, oh, actually, can you do this extra piece? Like, oh, okay, well, now I can't do format masking. Like, oh, now my existence export doesn't work to solution this. Now I have to do a formula. Now it's 3 formulas. Now it's 4 formulas. Definitely don't be like me and just passively take those feedbacks and build progressively more haywire formulas. Like, find out exactly what those requirements are at the beginning of your new job and just build it one time. And I didn't cover like daylight time with this. That's also another piece that I feel like I do well enough, but is not exactly precise. I just kind of do, March to November, and then November to March. And there's just going to be a few days that might not correctly identify that as standard or daylight time, and no one's caught me on it yet. Otherwise, you can be very specific, of course, with the day. Like, okay, this year, daylight is on these dates. But again, if you're just making this evergreen, yeah, it gets good enough. Until someone calls you on it, then you have to build it really precisely. But yeah, breaking all these into separate exports and stitching them back together, it's often the cleanest way to handle it. Again, just to fit those requirements. It's a bit more manual of a lift up front, but it just gives you so much more control. It's going to cover all those onesies and twosies issues. 3, separate event visibility from event structure. So one of the smartest moves in this build is treating event selection as a logic problem. So foldering, template choices, student attributes, these all work together. So students are only going to see the events that make sense for them. That means fewer one-off emails, less duplication, and more tailored experiences without actually building 10 versions of the same campaign. 4, plan for exception handling early. This build is full of real-world exceptions, the umbrella registration pages, events that should link directly, unlimited capacity events, special exclusions, and it all actually works. So the lesson is simple. Don't assume your first pass logic covers reality, though try as hard as you can to do it, and build with those backups. Catch the null cases, leave yourself room to overwrite edge cases before they become problems in production. Live mistakes, as number 5, live mistakes are still useful training material. A clean demo is, of course, nice. I feel like a real demo is better. Catching a bad join, realizing a subquery is scoped wrong, my last video. Finding a broken comparison, not putting the 2 in my time. Just the silly little things that I'm just trying to do as I go through this, and I'm missing. And we're kind of seeing how we can just troubleshoot in real time. Nothing you're going to build that is complicated, you're going to get right the first time. And again, me not looking at whatever this half an email width is beforehand. It's the fun little pieces of troubleshooting as we go. It's just about diagnosing logic, spotting where the structure is broke, and just recovering as fast as you can, as cleanly as you can. And I actually didn't do the logic here. So we could, like I said, just put these these dictionaries, and maybe we're just doing events. Snippet is just what they used to call content blocks, and they had already built this. I'm assuming they just couldn't tear it out, or else, I mean, that would also just brick anything that anyone is currently doing. So I understand why they still call that a snippet, but for folks who might be newer, content blocks used to be called snippets. And then we're just going to copy this again. And what did I call, was it just events 2 weeks? Yeah, 2 weeks. I guess this is just bonus material now at this point since I already did my blueprint breakdown, but and I don't have these content blocks live, but I'm showing you just some of the logic here because this is a fun piece of conditional logic that, again, folks might not know about. So what we're going to do is essentially count how many items are in the we're going to count how many items are in that dictionary export, and then we're going to essentially write conditional logic against it. So we're going to do if, and we'll just get this just to get the logic. Greater than, equal to, what do we say it was 5? But what we don't actually want, let me just save that down so I can double click into it. So we don't actually want, like, events isn't a numeric number, but if we do a dot size, then it gives you that number. And maybe this is just, let's go, and we'll just make this as an else. So if that first criteria isn't true, then just give us the second one here. So you would just need to program this for loop inside of your content block. And you're essentially just going to be pulling it from that different export. So as you can see, we were pulling this from events. This would just become events 2 weeks for that second content block. And depending on how long this list is going to be which one it shows. I feel like there's one other thing I wanted to talk about before I signed off, but I don't remember what it is. So I guess I'm just going to say thank you for joining me. Like I said, please join me on the Innovation Forge. I do a ton of different types of episodes there. There is the workbench walkthroughs, which is kind of similar to this. I've done like feature engineering with configurable joins. I have a couple hours of those walkthroughs. It's very simple, very similar to what I'm doing here. I'm just like building it live, walking you through the logic. This Gilded build series that I'm doing now is a little bit, I think, different just because I'm showing these really like over-engineered, feature-heavy examples of how I'm doing these different elements. Even if you want to, you're not necessarily doing this kind of ongoing adaptive deliver. We did tons of things in those exports and tons of useful information on like dictionaries and URL parameters and whatever else I specifically asked AI to pull out a clip of. So there's going to be so many valuable nuggets to these Gilded builds. Valuable golden nuggets in these Gilded builds. But the workbench walkthroughs, a little bit different, a little bit more straightforward. There's the ForgeWorks grimoires, which are very stylized, narrative-based trainings. I have 2 series of them, engines, and then the student journey that I will eventually get through. It's just hour-long trainings. And each training is a tarot card draw, and I built my own tarot. I made my own tarot deck, which is things like the season of the cycle, the event topic, not the event topic, the topic of the thing, the practitioner, so it's the codex practitioners and student personas. And I've also used that tarot card to build an actual game. So again, that's going to be available as a Google Sheet. You can make a copy of that. And it's basically apples to apples, but for enrollment management scenarios, which might also be being used by other people. Not necessarily the game, but the concept, which I'm really excited for. So yeah, join me for the ForgeWorks grimoire join me for the interviews that I have with the amazing community around Slate, and just amazing people that have been gracious enough to give me their time for those interviews. Coffee and Coals, getting the backstories and the names of the Codex practitioners, the enrollment aces. Really excited about the Metric Court, or the Court of Metrics. That's coming up as well soon. And then also I give you a peek behind the curtain of just the different creative pieces of doing the podcast, publishing the books. I have 2 books. If you want to go buy my books, the first one is on adaptive enrollment management, engagement scoring, predictive modeling, tons of really useful screenshots, pieces there about how to do things, feature engineering, configurable joins, very, very translatable, transferable skills. Even if you're not doing engagement scoring, you're not doing predictive modeling, the adaptive enrollment management piece there is also, I think, really helpful lens to view our work in. And then, what's my other one? From posters to practice, volume 1 journeys is a fun one as well. I need to end this video though, so we're not going to go into that. I also have the Enrollment comic book that is released, the first issue of, and then there's also the Fieldsmith Register of the Enrollment, which is adaptive enrollment management meets Pokemon, Digimon, whatever. Digimon if you have taste, Pokemon if you're just following the crowd. But we don't need to get into that now yet either. The instruments of perpetual flux. So a lot of the content that I'm doing on the Innovation Forge, I'm trying to present educational materials in an entertaining way. There's also the Ember Walk, my Tuesday through Friday 2 to 10 minute musings on the craft of enrollment. So please join me on the Innovation Forge. Please join me on the Ember Walk. Please join me on Substack, on LinkedIn, with all the newsletters that are just fueling content for the podcast and future books. But remember, above all else, to strike true.